All right. Well, let's introduce ourselves here. I mean, we all know who you are, but I'm Mark.
I'm Seth. Good to meet you. Are you in your closet in 2022?
I I am in my closet in 20. Yeah, the acoustics are good in here, and my family is out there, so I'm in here hiding from my family.
All right.
I got you. But it's safe if you want to come out. We will accept you no matter what.
It's also my weird off tribute to R. Kelly.
Oh man! Wow,
And his
yeah.
37-part series, so we all laughed at before we cringed.
Oh man, now that should be what the episode's about. That's unwatchable. That's so good.
That's
I
unwatchable.
love those.
Yeah, that'd be tough to go back and watch,
Little bit.
A little bit tainted.
Yeah.
Can't really rock the Ignition remix anymore, to put it mildly.
Oh, dude, tell me about it. That used to be my karaoke go-to.
Yeah, everybody loved that song. It's like Hitler did it. It's like a Charles Manson composition.
Yeah, it's over.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can never listen to Hitler anymore. Hello and welcome to Unwatchables, the podcast here to talk difficult films and chew bubblegum, and we are all out of bubblegum. I am Marc Dottavio.
I'm Seth Troyer.
And who better to help close out our month of high-profile misfires than Nathan Rabin himself, the chronicler of all pop culture disasters and author of the books The Joy of Trash and My Year of Flops. So far, we have covered, to use the words of our guest, plenty of flops and fiascos, but what about the secret successes? On the table are two wildly ambitious and highly divisive passion projects, films by young directors following up cult hits. We have Richard Kelly's 2006 gonzo sci-fi satire, whatever it is, Southland Tales, and David Robert Mitchell's 2018 absurdist noir, Under the Silver Lake. They've got soul, but are they soldiers? All right.
Wow. Oh,
It's always my favorite part.
I got chills.
Thank you. All right, so our guest today is the one and only Nathan Rabin. You may know him from his days at The Onion, The AV Club, and The Dissolve, or from his many books, just some of which are Weird Al, the book, The Weird Accordion to Al, and the brand new The Weird A Coloring to Al. Another one of my favorites is You Don't Know Me, But You Don't Like Me, about his beloved Juggalo subculture. And these days you can find him at nathanrabin.com, aka Nathan Rabin's Happy Place, a treasure trove of original content. You can also support him on Patreon, where you can get everything from cool swag to voting in polls to even picking what he has to watch and write about. So, Nathan, I still feel like I've only scratched the surface there with your credits, but thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you. It is my pleasure. And pimps don't commit suicide.
Right.
That's what I've heard.
I just want to throw that out as
I've heard it several
introduction,
times.
That's the moral of the story. So how are things going over at Nathan Rabin's Happy Place these days?
They're good. We just released the Weird A Coloring to Al Cynical Movie Cash-In Edition, which is the extended version of the coloring book that I put out with my illustrator, Felipe Sobrero, who's a really, really brilliant guy. He's a Brazilian colorist and illustrator, and Al liked him so much that he chose him for his book. His other book, I guess he wrote Weird Al the book with me, if I can just brag shamelessly. So yeah, we're very, very excited about that, and I just watched Weird the Al Yankovic story 3 times, and I have a 5,000 word piece coming out on it on my website tomorrow. So I feel like I really chose the right film to attach myself to parasitically. Because it's very, very good, and like the movies that we're going to be talking about tonight, it's also very weird.
All right.
Excellent.
Yeah, you would be the one who we would be waiting to hear his thoughts on the movie. It sounds
Thumbs
like
down.
Right. Gonna burn all of his bridges with
Al's
Weird Al
not gonna
now.
like it, but yeah, a 5,000 withering band. No, I think it's a masterpiece. And I wrote a dissertation on its importance and its significance, and tried to give it a historical context.
All right, that is exciting. I can't wait to read that.
I want the Juggalo book. I didn't know you did that. I
Well,
just
it's a half juggalo and half fish.
okay.
So it's the two things that all of America can agree
Fish
on,
too.
other than Southland Tales and Under the Silver Lake.
Whoa.
Yeah.
See, yeah. I'm a bad fan. All I knew was you'll hate me, but I heard about the Pixie Dream Girl thing.
No,
The incident.
that's what I'm known for.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
right.
and I've come to peace with
You
that.
coined the term, but I also heard like maybe you like tried to like I don't know, disown it or something
Well,
too
I
a little bit.
record podcasts in my closet these days. If I have a claim to fame, I'm going to embrace it.
Of course.
I'm going to embrace it lustily. It's a complicated thing. It's a weird thing. I feel like it's kind of taken on a life of its own, and it got away from me. But I'm kind of okay with that. You know, people have their own ideas about it. People have their own conception. It's been used. It's been abused. But it's, you know, not every day that you come up with an idea that has seized the imagination of the American people. You know, that makes you a dancer on Jeopardy. That gets you into the
Excellent.
dictionary. You know, this is my claim to fame, and I'm, you know, it's like Jimmy Walker. It's like people wanted him to say dynamite, and he got very rich and famous and was very well known for saying dynamite. And then at a certain point, he didn't want to say dynamite. So I'm Jimmy Walker, and I'm saying dynamite all morning and all day long, because, you know, that's what people know me for, and that's A-okay with me.
Did Natalie Portman ever call you drunkenly and like just like really mad or like rapping?
He's in her closet right now.
I think I made Kirsten Dunst sad, and I pissed off
Oh,
Zoe
no.
Kazan. And Kirsten Dunst is amazing. She's like one of the greatest actresses of her generation. She's
She'll
like
be
this
fine.
amazing survivor. And it's understandable if you want to be synonymous with like a trope that people, you know, revile and think is sexist and think is reductive and think is simplistic. Like, I understand. Why she, and then also Cameron Crowe, who has blocked me on Twitter, might
man.
feel
Really?
a little ambivalently or might feel a little bit negatively about it. And then Zoe Kazan once dismissed me as or dismissed the term as being created by a sexist blogger. And that made me very angry because I didn't want to be known as blogger. Secondarily, I didn't want to be known as being sexist.
First of all.
But I've also made peace with Zoe Kazan, and partially by saying, you know, I didn't want to make life difficult for women who embody this archetype, who are accused of being that archetype, or who are confused with it. I didn't want to make their lives more difficult. I didn't want to contribute to sexism. I didn't want to contribute to women being, you know, stereotyped and minimized and put into various boxes, you know. So it's just, again, it's all just very, like the movie The Southland Tales. It's all just very, very complicated.
Yes.
We're gonna get Kirsten Dunst on the podcast, and we're gonna quash this beef. And
we do need to do Spider-Man 3. So
I think she's great.
Well, yeah, it seems like it's more of a comment on the you know, the role of the archetype in the film, not as on them as people.
Totally, and the writers too.
Right,
I think
exactly.
This idea of just this sort of sad sack white schlumpy dude in his 35, so who creates this character, you know, as a sort of wish fulfillment thing. I think that's more of where the criticism is directed, and not at women themselves.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you are our Manic Pixie Dream guest today. And
glad to hear that.
Is there, before we dive right into Southland Tales, I mean, was there anything just in general that was on your mind that made you pick these two movies, or is it just because you know, you like them?
Well, I recently saw Southland Tales, the director's cut, and so if I can once again brag or humble brag, at one point I was supposed to write the liner notes for them from Arrow. I wrote liner notes for Donnie Darko, and then I was told a couple of years ago, like, hey, Richard Kelly's going to Put out his director's cut, the Cannes cut of this. Do you want to write the liner notes for it? And I said, oh my God, that sounds amazing. That sounds like a dream project. I'd love to do that. And then I didn't hear anything for like a year and a half, and I'm like, obviously a movie is crazy, and a filmmaker as eccentric and unique as Richard Kelly might not follow through on his pledge to do this thing, and it would have been wonderful, but it's probably just not going to happen. And then, you know, I saw on the internet that it is going to happen, but, you know, obviously I was not involved at that point, and sort of my contact at Arrow had moved on. And I watched it again. I'd written about it for my World of Flops, and I loved it. Before I kind of thought it was a mess, but it had a lot of interesting things going for it. And I thought like, oh, this is, kind of the definition of kind of like the flawed follow up. And then yeah, just watching the director's cut, like I totally get it, man. And the crazy thing, for me at least, is what I felt Southland Tales needed was it needed to be longer, it needed to be looser, and it had to make less sense.
Wow.
And
Man,
that would
we're-
seem to be counterintuitive, but I felt like those were three things that I didn't realize were, and the fact that it's 2.5 hours long and doesn't seem to make any sense,
Yeah.
and seems to be kind of loose, would all seem to be problems. But again, just rewatching it, and I just watched it. I lost my Cannes cut DVD from Arrow, so I had to rewatch it in the theatrical cut. And again, it wasn't as good, and I could feel where the rhythms were different and the tone was different, and it wasn't anywhere near as satisfying. But I could also remember the experience that I had. So I've now seen Southland Tales 4 times, and I think it's kind of fascinating, and I would like to talk to other human beings about it.
Man, spoiler, me and Nate are on the same grass for sure. We're smoking the same stuff.
Well, it's good. I'm glad that you saw both versions recently, because now we'll
Yeah.
be able to compare them, because this was my first time seeing the whole film, and this is so far the only version that I've seen. Just to give some background then to anybody who's listening who might not know about it, Southland Tales is directed and written by Richard Kelly, who became famous with his debut Donnie Darko, that premiered at Sundance in 2001. And unlike our next director we're going to talk about, who there are lots of similarities, Donnie Darko was kind of a bomb at first, at least when it came out into theaters. It kind of took a few years for it to kind of come into its own with its cult following, but it did have a lot of champions from people like Kevin Smith, Christopher Nolan. Drew Barrymore's production company was the one that got it made. So he was geared for a follow-up that, for a movie that over time had become popular. And he was given almost 4 times the budget. Suddenly he has big stars in it, like Dwayne Johnson, Justin Timberlake, Sean William Scott, Zelda Rubinstein, Curtis Armstrong, John Lovitz, big box office draws. And
Wallace Shawn.
Shawn. Yeah.
Literally everyone.
And as if it couldn't get any more, 2006, a score by Moby. So yeah, we got it's even
a very chill score by Moby.
Very chill.
Yes.
As
good music
as they
to
should
chill out
be.
to.
Yep. And it did premiere at Cannes in a kind of rough cut that was 160 minutes long. And just to give an idea of what that was like at the time, I do have a little paragraph here from Roger Ebert, who wrote about seeing the movie first at Cannes and then in the shorter cut. So I'm just going to read a little thing that he wrote here real quick. He said, "After I saw the first cut of Kelly's Southland Tales at Cannes 2005, I was dazed, confused, bewildered, bored, affronted, and deafened by the boos all around me at the most disastrous Cannes press screening since, yes, The Brown Bunny. But now here's the director's cut, which is 20 minutes shorter, lops off a couple of characters and a few of the infinite subplots, and is even more of a mess. I recommend that Kelly keep right on cutting until he whittles it down to a ukulele pick."
I know he's gone, but don't you want to just tickle him sometimes? Oh my god.
Well, I think about, and again, as you might imagine, my mind is kind of obsessed with Weird Al Yankovic at the moment. But I am struck by the fact that he gave UHF 0 stars or 1 star, and wrote this eviscerating review in which he took aim at things including Weird Al Yankovic's posture. He said he doesn't carry himself like a leading man. He slumps. He's hunched over. And I'm like, what are you gonna attack the way his blood cells are moving?
There are rules.
Seriously, and it's it just felt very, very cruel. And he's like, nobody will ever laugh at this movie. And I'm like, time has proven you wrong, Roger Ebert.
Yeah, sometimes
People have laughed at UHF and they continue to laugh at you.
I'm one of them.
Yes, he has not always been on the right side of history. Sometimes he was the lone champion of a great movie, and sometimes it was quite the opposite. And wherever you land on this movie, he was, I guess, reflecting what the general word of mouth was at the time, that it was seen as kind of a disastrous premiere. I think even Richard Kelly has talked about it not quite being finished. Like he was kind of rushing to get it done because they were so excited to get the chance to screen it in competition there. Although it sounds like the version they came out with after that, and this was after it was picked up by Sony, they got him to re-edit it down to like 144 minutes, and it got a pretty small limited release, which makes it not very surprising that it made, I think, less than $400,000 versus like a $17 million budget.
Oh my God.
And so, yeah, it was just last year that the Cannes Cut became available. And so this was the first time for a lot of people seeing it. And that's what we're here to talk about. And so, Nathan, that in particular you see as being better.
Yeah, definitely.
Original,
Well, I was
right?
just saying that. Yeah. I feel like, weirdly enough, it needed to be longer. It needed to be looser. It needed to stretch out. It needed to be more of a mood piece. It needed to vibe. And
Yeah.
it takes time to vibe. It takes time to find a groove. And it takes time to be as crazy and as atmospheric and as ambitious and audacious as you want to be. And I think the genius of Southland Tales, and I do think it is a genius motion picture, lies in its complete investment in being exactly what it wants to be. And I feel like what happened was Richard Kelly got scared when the whole world hated his little brainchild, and he hated his baby, and hated this thing that was so personal to him. So he snipped away at it, and he tried to make it more conventional. He tried to make it something that the world would accept. And the world was never meant to accept Southland Tales. It was meant to be a very, very weird movie, very, very small, specific, but very loyal and devoted cult.
And yet it has this like feeling that it's trying to hit the zeitgeist like right between the eyes, like having like all the biggest names of its day, and like it feels like it's trying to ape a lot of aesthetics from that time, and that is what I love about that.
Well, yeah, in ways that you've never seen them before. You know, and I do, and I feel like this is so tuned into my brainwave as a Gen Xer, and kind of how I see the world. And part of it is just stuff like Saturday Night Live. Like Saturday Night Live has like this central significance in sort of how I've seen the world and my comic sensibility, and it's almost like this weird primal thing. And it feels like Richard Kelly is kind of working through all of his weird, intense emotions about Saturday Night Live through this movie, in part by casting, the craziest fucking cast you've ever seen since Skidoo.
Yes.
Which I think that the shorter version reminded me of a little bit, in part because it's hitting its wackiness a little too hard. Whereas again, I feel like part of the genius of the director's cut is that it takes its time and it spreads out, and it understands that you don't have to rush, and you can just exist, and you can just kind of live in the moment for a while.
Yeah, I took some notes while I was watching this, and half of the notes were just names of cast members with a question mark after them. It was just like John Lovitz, Janine Garofalo,
Christopher Lambert,
Kevin Smith in some crazy like makeup with a
Methuselah.
beard. Is that Eli Roth on the toilet getting shot? And like you said, it says there's Amy Poehler, Sherry O'Terry is in this. Forget SNL, Will Sasso from Mad TV
totally.
is in this.
I interviewed Wallace Shawn a while ago, and I asked him about this movie, and he said that he read the screenplay and he had no idea what it was about, and he didn't understand it at all. And he said, I thought about Ralph Richardson and how Ralph Richardson was given the play Waiting for Godot. And Ralph Richardson said, I have no effing idea what this is all about. I'm not going to be in some dumb thing called Waiting for Godot. So Wallace Shawn did not want to be Ralph Richardson rejecting Waiting for Godot. So he said yes to Southland Tales. And there are so many like weirdly prescient elements of this movie, one of which is that somebody who controls a popular alternative energy source is a giant weirdo with way too much power.
Absolutely.
Not going to say who that might be like, but that is,
Yes.
Wallace Shawn's weird, what do you call it, like curly Q thing? Everybody's got a whole thing going on visually, as well as
He
character-wise.
looked like a Zoolander villain to me.
Yes. We have
It's
Justin
very
Timberlake with a crazy scar across his face. Especially like you had never seen him at that point. I think we were still like not even at the point of like starting to see him as more of a serious artist too, like even in his music career.
Well, and I think there's a sense that kind of at the time, sort of the two biggest alpha males in all of popular culture were Justin Timberlake, studly, boy band savant turned massive star, and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. So I love that Richard Gille had the genius to take these two people who are known for certainty and swagger and confidence and cast them as these lunatics who are just sort of free falling through life and are fundamentally confused about the world and themselves and have kind of a difficult time delineating between reality and fantasy. So like he did a lot of very weird subversive things with some very popular people. This is also my favorite Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson performance.
Oh yeah,
because it's so atypical and it's so weird and it makes so many great choices that are unexpected.
It's like what a lot of people say about Paul Thomas Anderson, which I think is true, like, but like times 10, like taking actors like Adam Sandler or whatever and like making them into these weird characters in movies that they would never think to be in and stuff like that. This is like just one step beyond, it feels like, and doing it like every other scene with somebody, like suddenly in a some sort of outfit you never imagined them to be in and saying something you would never imagine them to be in. I never expected ever to see Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson on screen this long, and to see him do even a quarter of what he does in this, which is just batshit wild stuff, just so above like and beyond anything you would expect to ask of this actor.
Oh, totally. And then Sarah Michelle Gellar, I think, also gives a performance that we've never seen before and will never see again. And she plays a porn star who also has an energy drink that is extremely tasty.
Yes,
and she's kind of this sort of Kim Kardashian figure, and she's also a pop star. And her big hit is called "Teen Horniness Is Not a Crime."
Such a good joke.
And again, I was watching the weird prescient things. Like part of it was her and her porn star friends having a talk show where they talk about things of interest to porn stars and people who aren't porn stars. And what they're talking about is the Supreme Court and whether or not they should, legalize or ban abortion. And they're like anticipating a world in which abortion is legal in the United States. And you have to like go to other countries for it. I'm like, that's just very crazy that this weird, bizarre, intentionally out there movie from 2006, 2007, 2005 has so much weird resonance in 2022. And I think that's also part of what I like about it is that you don't appreciate that a movie embodies the era when you see it, because you're living in the moment. You don't have that kind of hindsight. You don't have that distance. And I think from the perspective of 2022, this is like the most aughts movie ever. And part of what I love about it is that it's dated in such an interesting way. And again, just kind of embodies the whole when George W. Bush was the preeminent boogeyman of the day. And it was this weird thing where on one hand, he was the personification of evil and he was the Iraq War and he was all these dead children, but at the same time he was also kind of this buffoon, and he was also kind of sort of likable and just sort of a goof. And this has the kind of weird Bush who's evil but also is just kind of a guy, so yeah, this is so much going on in this movie. And it doesn't entirely hold together, but I don't mind that. I think I like movies that are very messy and don't make a lot of sense and that bite off more than anybody could chew.
Well, that's a great description of this. And speaking of that, I usually try to do at least a brief, plot synopsis for anyone who hasn't seen the movie. And I really think I've met my match with this one.
Brief is impossible.
Yeah. And I mean, maybe if I could just, in the spirit of the movie, just start spewing out plot and characters in all directions, and maybe something will make sense. But we have talked about Justin Timberlake, who narrates the film. He's always quoting scripture in the book of Revelations and pontificating. He's an Iraq war veteran. And, we start out with a prologue that is very dense and kind of just shoves you right in there that there's been a nuclear war. There's kind of a World War III going on in a draft that was instituted. At the same time, we have this nationwide kind of surveillance agency going on, and there's an energy crisis where this company with Wallace Shawn, Zelda Rubinstein, Beth Grant from Donnie Darko standing around looking regal, and the guy from Revenge of the Nerds, and Booger. Yeah,
please
Booger.
give him at his dignity. His name is Booger.
Yes.
And on top of it, just to set the stage for just how like sensory overload and like, wait, what this movie is doesn't it already start to establish like that this is part 3? Like,
I'm getting to
chapter
that.
3.
Yes, we start on part 4, and if you're wondering where parts 1 through 3 are, they are in now out of print graphic novels. So
that were not available at the time. I'm pretty sure, like in any real way.
They wouldn't have been for
but
Cannes.
Again, I feel like Richard Kelly had this incredibly like elaborate, intricate, involved plan for the release of the film. And then Cannes happened, and he's like, "Oh crap! Everybody hates it. I'm just gonna try and cut my losses." So yeah, again, he had this whole idea of like this is gonna be like the crazy acid trip Star Wars of the mid-aughts, and then sort of reality put a kibosh on all of his grand plans.
I hate when it does that.
Yeah, and as it keeps introducing all these different people, which, the company that I was just describing has this thing called Fluid Karma that uses the power of the ocean to address an energy crisis. We've got these terrorist neo-Marxists, which is where Amy Poehler,
who are the remains of the Democratic Party. And this is another thing that I love is that this movie only takes place in a couple of years into the future.
Right.
And yet there's already this idea that people will see the Democratic Party, which again, pretty centrist, pretty mainstream, as being these crazed revolutionaries, these crazed Marxists.
Right.
And this very much seizes upon that.
Hilarious.
Again, this whole idea of like, that Joe Biden is basically Chairman Mao.
Right.
And it's like, no, there's a pretty big difference between, Joe Biden and Kim Jong-un.
Right.
Whether you want to acknowledge it or not.
Yeah, and these aren't even the like main characters. This is just the backdrop. The main characters are this boxer Santeros, action star, amnesiac. When that's all, if you're interested in that all happened before the movie started. So we kind of just start with Dwayne Johnson being this action star who's riding around in a car with Sean William Scott, who he doesn't know is actually the identical twin brother of the police officer he thought he was riding around with.
You're doing great, Mark.
Because they are identical twins. We have Sarah Michelle Gellar as an adult film star. John Lovitz is in there as some kind of scheming police officer. Again, Janine Garofalo, some kind of general.
Yes. Amy Poehler,
Sherry O'Terry.
As a spoken word superstar.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah.
Nora Dunn as Deep Throat 2.
That's right.
Oh, that's going on. Yeah, because there's like a cross. I don't know. The porn stars are friends with the Marxists. There's also like agents inside each group that are cross pollinating them all. He
has a Humpty Hump nose for no discernible reason, except that this is a very, very, very weird motion picture.
Yes, and I would say for someone just experiencing it for the very first time, part of it, the way that all these different threads just kind of start in media res, like as if a bunch of important stuff has already happened. We're diving forward into more stuff happening with hardly a breath. In a way, it's almost like tuning into like Avengers Endgame or something as your first Marvel movie was kind of what my experience was like. Or
there are also like one of the important things that happens in this movie is that there is a rift in the time-space fabric.
Oh yes,
and that through this rift in the space-time fabric, there are 2 boxer Santoros, and they may destroy the world, but also Boxer and his girlfriend Krista have written a screenplay that will foretell the end of the world. The end of the world will end with a bang and not with a whimper.
Right.
I, again, just talk about things that are so my shit. I'm kind of obsessed with Lou Pearlman, who was the boy band Svengali. Actually, according to that, Justin Timberlake. He was the guy who turned Justin Timberlake into a star. And then he made his fortune as a fraudulent blimp proprietor. So he claimed to be the world's most successful and biggest blimp merchant, and he had like one blimp, and it was this elaborate Ponzi scheme that like ended with him dying in prison.
And there's a huge blimp in this movie.
The whole climax takes place in a blimp, and also there's a bazooka, and there's
there's a floating ambulance
truck that is flying up into the air, and Christopher Lambert is involved with you too. So it really felt like this movie has like this weird indirect lifeline to my subconscious and to like the subconscious of like the 12-year-old me that like loved Night Court.
It's a real psychic event.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it really feels, you can tell he just had a million ideas and he just couldn't stuff them all in there fast enough. And it's, sometimes watching it, it almost feels like it's, a big, ungainly like adaptation of like an impossibly dense novel. Like if someone was trying to put infinite jest onto the screen or something and cram in every little thing.
Oh yeah. Well, I think that's one of the things. That sometimes you'll see something really, really crazy in a movie, and you'll be like, "Well, why is that in here?" And then you'll see that it is adapted from a novel.
Yes.
And novels have a license and the freedom to do certain things that movies kind of don't. But one of the things that they can do is like be very internal and be very like, okay, this is just one person's inside, and then you turn it into a movie, and you gotta fucking show people doing things. Sometimes you'll have things like I think of like it was like the Book of Henry. If I'm not mistaken, it was like based on a novel.
Love that.
It's like, you can do all sorts of crazy ass shit in that novel, and they do it into a movie, and you're like, we're committing you to an insane asylum because this is the craziest fucking movie anybody's ever made.
Sure.
And it's wrong.
Yeah, exactly. So it was kind of like designed like this multimedia experience, but all that we have now is the film to go along with it. And,
yes. I mean, one of my big anchors and ways in with the movie, especially this time that I watched it, was getting that feeling like early on that like, yeah, like maybe this is too much. Maybe this is like just a total train wreck and somebody trying to adapt a book that is not even a book or something. It's like somebody like on a train spewing nonsense at you. But then you get to the point where The Rock, who has amnesia, is like he is like doing that. He's like making a script that is, and he like it does this crazy explanation of what the script is about that is like, it feels like he's describing the movie you've been watching almost, which it is in a way, because it's loosely based off of like his amnesiac, half remembered memories that he has of what happened before he lost his memory, before the movie began.
Well, I think that's another reason why this movie was on my mind is that I'm writing a book called The Fractured Mirror. It's about movies, the film industry, and I'm going to write about 300 movies in it. I've done 185 so far, and this is an interesting one in that it is and it isn't a movie about movies. I mean, that's part of it, but it's a relatively small part of it. But it's also a fairly major part of it that he's this movie star, and he is actually playing this character named Jericho Kane.
Yes.
And this is again
action hero.
One of these weird meta moments in the Arnold Schwarzenegger movie, End of Days. He plays a character named Jericho Kane. And I literally think it spells slightly different. Like one is CH, the other is just a K. So it's just this very weird sort of meta thing. And it's, sort of The Rock, who at that point was kind of known as like the wrestling guy who was starting to act. For him to, be so self-deprecating and play such a weird character and such an out there motion picture, I think it took a lot of guts. And I think the fact that this did very poorly caused him to be like, I just gotta make movies where I beat up the bad guy, and I wish that this was more successful so that he could do more weird character actor parts and less just kind of generic big, brawny, muscular. Because again, I feel like that's part of what's so brilliant about this is so it plays against his physicality and plays against the fact that he's this Hulk, and it feels like that in so many other ways as well.
Yeah, if you look at his filmography after this movie, I mean, it's just, a bunch of Disney and Fast and Furious movies and
The Tooth Fairy.
Yeah, all kinds of stuff like that. And this is like, I do agree that this is probably his best film performance that we'll probably ever get from him. I think he does, as much as you can hold a movie like this together, he does. and that he is very funny. The casting is perfect. He has this really great deadpan comic, rhythm to it. Actually, after we got done watching this, we went back and watched those clips of him in Be Cool, which I think was one of the first times that people realized how funny he could be.
Yeah, that is a garbage motion picture, but he is really, really fun.
Yeah, he's like genetically created to be interesting on screen. So it's like, and it's not like an obvious choice, but in a way it should be, because once you see him again for like, if you need somebody for 3 hours to be there and be doing a lot of stuff, like he better be very fascinating to look at on a big screen, and he is.
If I'm not mistaken, like, The Rock had actually spoken at the Republican convention, like a couple of years before that. So the whole idea
awesome.
of like, oh, he's this, and
crazy.
then he actually endorsed Joe Biden in the last election. So woohoo, go Dwayne Johnson. But yeah, so there was again, he did not have to use a lot of imagination to think like, well, what would it be like if I was an action movie star? But what if I was an action movie star who was out of his goddamn mind and convinced that he was the Messiah, and also might be the Messiah, or he might be insane, or it might all be, this. And again, I just, I didn't have an opportunity to finish watching Under the Silver Lake, but I watched like an hour of it, and I felt like there were so many similarities between Dwayne the Rock Johnson's performance and Andrew Garfield. And it's fun to see these guys who are famous for playing superheroes and action stars, and these incredibly, gung-ho macho dudes play these lunatics and play these like spiritual seekers who don't know what's going on and are conspiracy theorists and are just kind of like spiraling into madness along with the rest of the world.
I totally agree with that. And like you said, Sarah Michelle Gellar probably gets to give one of her most memorable performances too in this. As far as the other major players, I think maybe Sean William Scott is the one who gets the least to do, or seems like someone that could have been played by a lot of other people.
Yeah, but there's an interesting texture to his performance, and there's like an intensity to it. And again, at the time, he was best known for playing Stifler,
right.
on American Pie. So I think it was interesting to see him do this kind of a performance, and he's kind of taken a step back. But he was in those hockey movies with Jay Baruchel, where he got to again do like an interesting character actor thing.
Yeah,
and I feel like every single actor here got to do an interesting character actor thing, including a lot of very interesting character actors, like your John Larroquettes, like your Wallace Shawns.
Right, he was
like
generous.
The guy who plays the W character. His name is totally escaping me.
Yeah. So as far as again, it's just a really hard movie to describe if somebody hasn't seen it. But I think a big part of whether it works for you or not is how funny you find it. And there is kind of, I think, especially people who are just coming off Donnie Darko, were not expecting him to have such like a raunchy kind of sense of humor, that there's a lot of like, dick jokes, fart jokes, or there's
lots of
poop jokes.
The number 69 figures pretty prominently. The character was, out of space for 69 minutes. And you could definitely see Richard Clay going, nice. But again, I feel like that's part of the reason why it was so poorly received at the time that it comes out, that it's this sort of day-glow, stoner, horny, sort of head film, Philip K. Dick sort of thing. It was doing a bunch of different things all at once, and I think it gave people a lot of things to find offensive and be affronted by. But it's kind of crazy to me, because Roger Ebert wrote Beyond the Valley of the Dolls.
It all goes back to
so
that.
He's kind of one to be
like,
again, like this kind of shares a spirit with that, and is kind of anarchic and weird and horny and crazy.
Yes.
And another reason why I like this movie is because it's a great Los Angeles movie. And I haven't spent a lot of time in Los Angeles, but like I did a TV show there. I've known some people there. I love it. And I love it also because it's where they make the movies, and where they make the movies about the movies. And I feel like this has a really interesting take on Los Angeles in much the same way that Under the Silver Lake sort of is a movie obsessed with Los Angeles, and it's obsessed with the Los Angeles that I know and that I love.
Yeah, such an exaggerated version of the LA celebrity is seen here, which they are like very blatantly like LA celebrities that we know for sure.
Mandy Moore, talking about like the 2005.
Oh people, man,
you've never seen before. Like, yeah, she's his wife. She's Dwayne the Rock Johnson's wife, and there is a scene where she and Sarah Michelle Gellar have this erotic dance together.
Mhm.
And then something we haven't really talked about a lot, but you talked about Moby. I feel like the score here is really, really central
I
to its
love it.
success. It's very central to establishing a tone of kind of spare and sad and weird and
And making
minimalist and kind of
bizarre like
spacey.
scenes like actually work, like
Mm,
it really helps them work. That like very strange things are occurring in these scenes with actors that are not like obviously not sure exactly how what they're saying fits into the greater scheme of things or what they're
yeah.
doing, but it really does help. It really convinces you and pulls me along at least.
Yeah, and it's that's kind of similar in that way to Donnie Darko, where this, that is known for a lot of having, slow motion sequences set to, Tears for Fears songs or Echo and the Bunnymen, and I feel like this kind of doubles down on the needle drops, especially
Mm.
with that scene that I think is probably the most famous from this. I had seen the Justin Timberlake
Oh yeah.
musical number.
Hmm.
Like on YouTube before I'd ever seen the movie. I always kind of wondered how it fit in. I'm still not totally sure how it fits in,
I
but
mean,
Well, yeah. Well,
yeah,
that's again. That's one of the things that I loved about Director's Cut was just the sense of it holds together a lot better, and also the sense of just this sensory overload of just kind of one thing after another, and just kind of this experience, as opposed to just kind of like a conventional motion picture. And I
it,
feel like that's definitely just kind of again him throwing the hammer down and saying, "I'm going to do whatever the hell I want to do in this movie," including having Justin Timberlake stare into the camera for 2.5 minutes and lip sync this entire killer song.
yeah, for me, it's like my rebuttal to it just being like, okay, he's got a lot of plot that he's got to do really fast, and that's like what this is about. It's just like plot, 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 plot. He is also like not afraid to just use the medium as a visual medium for a second and have something like that. And there's a couple different scenes. There's like that dance number towards the end on the Zeppelin where it's more just like impressionistic as to like how it fits into the greater scheme of things. And it is like suddenly it's more just about like feeling it and feeling the vibe all of a sudden after. And it's a great reward, I think, if anything, after such a long time of you sitting there like trying to do the math, keeping up with everything. Like it's cool that he's also a director willing to do that.
I would tell you it's like in A Serious Man. You know, the message is embrace the mystery. And I feel like that's kind of how it is with Southland Tales, is that it's not necessarily supposed to make sense. It's just supposed to kind of be. You know, just supposed
Yes.
to experience it. And I've seen it 4 times at this point. And I'm definitely not sick of it.
Yeah, you brought up Infinite Jest, and I think that really like fits in with it. Thomas Pynchon, which like anyone who that I know who has read Thomas Pynchon, like that's the whole thing. It's like the barrier for entry that stops a lot of people is that it's so difficult, and it's like you're just like I can't follow it. I can't follow it, and like really like the trick is learning that like you're not. It's probably not even the intention to follow all of it. It is, if anything, like trying to mimic life and how it feels to be like in life, where it's like you have these like moments of clarity, moments where it's all like really coalescing, and then it's back into confusion, and you're like, wait, how does the world work? How does the government work? What is my place in this whole thing? And then again, just round and round with that whole idea. It's I personally just really get excited about being lost
Oh,
sometimes.
totally. Well, and I think it's interesting to note that this is a movie that came out roughly around the same time as A Scanner Darkly, which is Richard Linklater's sort of animated rotoscoped adaptation of a Philip K. Dick novel, which had a lot of very similar themes. One of which was, Keanu Reeves' character was a police officer, but he was also an informant, and he was kind of like living these two lives and being these two people at once, and it got very existentially confusing, in much the same way that Sean William Scott's life is very weird. Because he is a cop, but he's not a cop, and he's impersonating a cop, and he's a twin, but he's not a twin,
Yep.
and anyway. It's very complicated. I don't know that Sean William Scott knew what was going on with his character
Yeah,
at this point. Well, Sean certainly did not.
I had not read much Philip K. Dick the first time I had watched this, but I since then had read like Ubik and a bunch of other books by Philip K. Dick, and it was just like it made this make so much more sense. It fits right into that world of just like what your script writing professor in college would tell you is like go back and cut all this out. This is quote unquote convoluted, but that is what really elevates Philip K. Dick for me, and what elevates this for me is this, like, for me it's just like very generous layer cake of like he's a cop, but he's also an amnesiac, but he's also there's masks behind masks behind masks, all of this kind of stuff. I don't know. It's tasty.
Yeah, I think this is like, it's very important that if you can't get onto the wavelength of this movie, you might be in for a rough, 160 minutes. It's very much something you have to meet on its own terms. Yeah. And I do feel at kind of a disadvantage having to spend my first and only time seeing it, because it does seem like a movie that you need multiple times to really start to wrap your head around not only what's going on, but exactly how you're supposed to feel about it, or how funny you find it, or enlightening that it is. I am a little more sympathetic, I think, than either of you guys, to people who are just the movie is just gonna not be for them. That it is such an overload, and I think I do have kind of a issue with that, in the sense of, I think about movies that have a very deep, convoluted, sometimes confusing plot, like, Inherent Vice, or, or even Under the Silver Lake, or, movies like Big Lebowski or The Long Goodbye, something where there is something huge going on that's kind of baffling. And I think those movies have a particular protagonist who can kind of serve as your entry point, who's kind of as flummoxed as you are for a while. And that's kind of part of the joke, where this movie really does just feel like it's throwing stuff at you from every angle the whole time, from all the different characters, all the different plots and threads, that it is kind of a challenge to find somewhere where you can get that grasp, to kind of experience it along with them. Where a lot of times I felt like I was still trying to catch up, where everyone on screen knew what was going on, and I was scrambling, like running behind to try and follow it.
I think usually The Rock is your rock. So the fact that The Rock in this movie is just as confused. And again, is this weirdly passive protagonist who's kind of going sideways. And again, it's an interesting idea that he would write a script that would foretell the future. Because again, he does not seem like a terribly cerebral person. It's kind of hard to imagine him and his porn star girlfriend sitting down, hammering out a bunch of beats, hammering a bunch of dialogue, rewriting, revising. So again, this whole conception that they would just sort of dream what the future would be, and then it would become a reality. That's a very weird conceptual idea that I really liked, in part just because it kind of feeds into this whole bizarro world of Los Angeles. And this is the film business. That's sort of like the film business that we know. I mean, there's like a ride along, and he's filming him with the camera. And there's this very bracing moment where Sean William Scott uses the N-word. And, Dwight Johnson is a person of color. And there's this great moment where he looks at him, and there is just this incredible touch. He's like, I'm just kidding. So yeah, there's like, and again, there's this whole, they're really playing with the whole sort of mismatched buddy cop concept in like this very surreal, kind of like avant-garde sort of way. So yeah, I feel like it's doing so many weird, interesting things, and a lot of it just kind of, flies past you. Maybe the first time around, because it's so dense with ideas and there's so much going on, and a lot of it is silly and weird and kind of ridiculous.
I guess where my brain goes is just I can't, once I enter into a piece of art like this, or like again a book like Thomas Pynchon's books or something like that, it just seems very clear to me that the author, like, at least on some level, understands that it's too much. That it is something that is not, it's not a bite-sized little piece of chocolate or something. It is like a whole vast banquet of stuff that they're probably expecting you to like want to watch it again, or just admit that like you're rolling with what is given here.
And it's funny. I remember after this movie came out and it was received very disastrously. I remember thinking like Richard Kelly, kind of this hotshot filmmaker, this cult filmmaker, this auteur. A lot of people really liked him. Like, what's he going to do next? And I saw that he was going to adapt Richard Matheson's The Box for the big screen. And I remember thinking like, that's a really cool idea because it's such a commercial entity. And it's such a commercial idea, and it was an episode of Twilight Zone, and it's this classic conceit. And of course, he takes it and goes into a crazy direction that, like, outer space, and again, he Richard Kellyified it in a way that took something very simple and made it incredibly complicated and convoluted and weird and
Generous
and over the top and excessive.
Yeah, that's kind of the Kelly touch, I guess. And I wonder, Nathan, do you have a sense that this movie has been reevaluated because it was so synonymous with being a giant disaster? Has this found its audience yet, or do you think it's still on the way there?
I think it's a better movie than Donnie Darko. I think the theatrical cut kind of like, oh, I get it now, and I understand what he was going for, and I see where cutting 20 minutes from it did a lot of harm to it, and really messed with the rhythm, and really messed with the tone, and really, because again, this is a movie that shouldn't be rushed. This isn't a movie that's about getting to the next beat and getting to the next plot point, because it's irrelevant. It's about mood, it's about tone, it's about creating this world, it's about world building, it's about imagery. So yeah, I think it has been re-examined and reappreciated, and I feel like it's not considered this epic folly anymore. It's considered this really interesting film, and I think it's definitely a cult film, and it might be a cult classic at this point.
I would say that I recommend the Cannes cut because I did watch the theatrical cut the first time, and granted, I was like bong high and watching it with friends, so I did not necessarily remember a lot, but from that first viewing, but it was definitely more of the traditional like, what the fuck is this? But this time watching it like 5 or 6 years later, again, like remembering very little from that first viewing, I did find it like it's a lot to do. You have to keep up with it for sure. You got to keep lucid, but I did not see it as this like incomprehensible thing. Like I did feel like I got at least like an 85 on the test or something,
Yeah, though being high probably still helps in general as far as the vibes go.
Oh,
I was high this time.
This is a big weed movie.
Yeah, for sure. And Janine Garofalo is in this version, and she's an extra in the theatrical version. Which is very, very weird. Yeah, she's General MacArthur, who is MacArthur's granddaughter.
Sure, why not?
I'm not sure where they explicitly specify that, but yeah, I think that's again one of the weird, interesting things that, and yeah, I think her presence in this definitely. Also, to be incredibly shallow, she looks great. Jane Garofalo looks really, really good in the not that that's important or anything, but there are so many sort of live people in this. There are so many weird comic figures, and that adding her to the mix in this really weird role, I think, is one of the things that makes the Cannes cut better than the theatrical.
All right. Well, I want to give everyone a chance just to share any final thoughts, any things that you haven't, have a chance to get to in the conversation. And of course, even though it's always obvious by this point, whether you would unwatch the movie if you can. I want Nathan to have the last word. So I'll just start out really quick that even though I definitely like this less than anybody else who's on here, and maybe I'm just a few viewings away to it finally clicking with me, I would not unwatch it because it either lives up or down to its reputation, depending on how you look at it. And it did feel very long. It is very long. But I can't say that I was watching it and saying, oh man, there's a perfect 90-minute movie in here. If only they could get it down. That's not what's going on here. So if you're along for the ride, you're going to get that ride. I wish I found more of it funny. There were a few, I occasionally did laugh, especially when we have these two characters who are basically making it look like staging that they're being murdered and then actually get murdered during it, and the fake squibs go off after they've been shot and are dead on the ground, and that still makes me laugh just thinking about it. Otherwise, though, I did wish that it would just slow down at certain points to give like a scene a chance to unfold, because when we do get that, it can be good, like that scene between the Dwayne Johnson and Seann William Scott in the car, where you really get to admire the performances. And anything, again, with The Rock, anything that kind of narrows things down on him were the parts that I like the most. So yes, and we get this great little finger twiddling part of his performance, like we're in a Chuck Jones cartoon all of a sudden.
Where it's like Mr. Burns. It reminds
Yes.
me a lot of Mr. Burns and his trademark gesture.
Yes, so I can't argue that it's not kind of a colossal mess in its way, but it is not the kind of mess that you get to see very often every day. And so, Seth, where do you come down?
I do adore it for sure. It's probably pretty apparent with all my yammering, like gushing, but it does just feel very exciting. It reminds me, which I am a big comic book fan, and I've always been. It reminds me of like these crisis series that would happen in like DC and Marvel all have these like crisis moments. And famously there's one called Final Crisis that is like it's all the superheroes, and it's like, it's like what in Endgame is, right? But Final Crisis is like seen as like the ultimate of this, where it's like it's still referred to just as incomprehensible because it's all this like too many characters, because it's like all these like Batman's there, Superman's there, everybody's there, and it's like you have to know everything about everybody's origin. You have to have read all these comic books, and of course, once they like collect it all into a trade, there's still like, oh well, there was a couple issues that just didn't make it in there and would have made it make more sense, which like parallels this perfectly. Which there are like actual comic books that if you read them, that would make this movie make more quote unquote sense. Which to that point, it's kind of interesting that I do love this movie so much, because like quite often my spiel is that like I don't care so much about plot in storyline, which I think like we are sometimes like too hung up on and too obsessed with. Like, oh, like what really makes this a great movie is because I get that it was his brother in the end the whole time, which is just like, doesn't do much for me, like more than atmosphere or vibe do for me. It's why it's great that it takes those things, which are like just massive amounts of plot, but it creates an atmosphere and a vibe by just being this convoluted, crazy script idea that you would shop around, right? And be like, no one would understand. And this is like actually somebody made one of those things, which I kind of love that about this. So it just has a lot of what I love and what I sometimes don't love, but is elevated by just this totally unique presentation, and just very much of its time. It feels like even the fucking font. I love all the like new metal like butt rock kind of font that looks like it's on energy drinks that comes out, and like American Chopper font. It's just all there, and I remember it from that time. It's so exciting. And yeah, that's the end of my spiel. I'm not going to make it a Southland Tales length spiel.
So you would unwatch it, is what you're saying?
Yeah, it fucking sucks, and it's boring, and I don't understand it, and that's just really bothers me when I don't understand things.
Yeah, I mean, this to me sort of embodies the concept of the blank check of, he made a movie that people really loved, and they said, we believe in you, we believe in your vision, you have carte blanche to do whatever you want. And he created something very singular and very personal and very crazy. And that's beautiful. And that's, I think, one of the most things that I love about this movie is that it reflects somebody's personal vision in a very pure way. And that's something you don't really see a whole lot in movies these days. And I feel like he's real auteur. And part of being an auteur is going too far and alienating people and being divisive and going crazy and failing in front of the entire world. And I wish that there were more filmmakers like that, because the film world would be a lot more interesting.
All right. And watching the director's cut back again, do you still think that the difference is that stark, or did it help you get into the movie just in
Yeah, I mean,
general?
I think it definitely, I definitely like this one a lot more. You know, I rewatching, I think watching the director's cut helped me appreciate the theatrical cut, but it also kind of highlighted what worked in the director's cut and what made it special and what made it unique and why it was, you know, the preferred version by a great deal. And again, I think also one of that's kind of crazy about it is substantially longer and it feels shorter.
All right. Okay, so we got a secret success here then. All right. Cool. Well, that brings us then to our next film, which had a lot of people at the time when it come out were crying Southland Tales about it in particular, which is Under the Silver Lake by David Robert Mitchell, who actually his first film was 2010's The Myth of the American Sleepover, which is a very small film. I haven't seen it, but I think it was,
I think people liked it.
yeah, it's kind of
It
warmly
was supposed to be
received,
cute.
but didn't make a big splash or anything.
Did that have like some like super famous actor in it?
Ooh, that's our producer's going to have to get on his console
Yeah,
here
let me see here.
and go through that because I'm not sure. I do.
Tony, here, boy.
I think somebody notorious may have been in it. As a matter
I'm
of
here.
fact.
I'm on it.
Let's see here. There we go. So Myth of
Nobody
the
in this
American
thing that I,
Sleepover?
nobody in this thing that I would recognize. I don't know if you guys would, but
Let me see here. Did you guys know who Riley? How do you pronounce her last name?
Is she the one who was in Under the Silver Lake?
Yeah,
I do not
You
know
her
how to say her
grandfather?
last name.
Do you know who her grandfather is?
No.
Elvis Presley.
Holy crap! Okay.
Yeah, it makes sense because she looks like she's Elvis Presley.
Right. Well, that's so appropriate for a movie that has so many like old and dead celebrities all surrounding it. But yeah, it was in 2014.
to complete your sorry, to complete your fact check, the Myth of the American Sleepover does not have any cast members that have a Wikipedia page. So
Amy Seimetz. Amy Seimetz does. She's a good
Oh, she's in
actress.
that?
She's in it. Yeah.
Oh,
She's
okay.
a good writer, producer as well.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's one then. But it wasn't until 2014 when he came out with It Follows, which was a big hit relative to its budget. It had like a $2 million budget. It made $23 million. And I mean, 2014, I guess, in terms of horror, was like a lifetime ago. I think that was one of the first kind of drops in the elevated horror bucket that kind of had a theme behind it, not in an overbearing way, but I think there's kind of a line between that and later movies that would come around, like the Babadook and Hereditary, that were all about trauma and everything. But I think it's one of my absolute favorite horror movies of the decade. That, and I don't know, The Witch, I think, might be the only thing for me that comes close as far as a horror movie from that decade. So usually when a director has a big hit that's a horror movie like that, they make more horror movies. And instead, he does this 180 and does Under the Silver Lake, which, like Southland Tales, is sprawling, surreal, kind of raunchy in its humor. It's set in LA, had 4 times the budget, a big star in Andrew Garfield. And then kind of similarly, it has this Cannes premiere that I wouldn't say, from what I read about it, didn't sound necessarily catastrophic, more like it was mixed and unencouraging with the kind of response it got. It was enough that the studio delayed releasing it from June to December and then pushed it all the way to next year in April, where it got a very small, limited theatrical release and was kind of pushed into the streaming services, I think, like almost right away. So the fact that it only made like $2 million against an $8 million budget was not surprising. And I think this one has had time to simmer now. And but I don't know, did you see it right initially when it came out, Nathan, or do you remember all of this?
I did
word?
not. I kind of I sort of left the world of professional film criticism in 2015 when I left the Dissolve, and then I started my own website in 2017. And one of my core features is called Control Nathan Rabin 4.0, and people can pay me money to see a film, a modest sum of money. I recommend it. I've written about a lot of motion pictures, and it's kind of corrupted me, and that there's certain things that I'm like, when people pay me money, then I will go see it. And it's dumb because like I'm a film writer. These are films in the culture. I should experience them. But I'm thinking stuff like Rise of the Skywalker. Like, I've never seen it. I probably should. It's the
No.
last Star Wars movie. It's people were reviling. I was thinking the somehow Palpatine returned could be something for the Joy of Trash,
Oh, yeah.
potentially. But I just never got around. And it was kind of like that with Under the Silver Lake, and somebody finally chose it for the column, and they said, "Hey, I think you're really gonna like it. It's just like Southland Tales." So I said, "Wow, this movie has a very weird reputation. It looks like a giant friggin' mess. It looks like a Los Angeles movie. It looks like it's a lot like some of my favorite movies of all time. Movies like The Big Lebowski." Movies like Night Moves, movies like The Long Goodbye. I love the idea of just some stoned weird slacker in Los Angeles who finds himself over his head trying to figure out some sort of giant cosmic mystery, which is this movie in a nutshell, but in that funky 2018 A24 sort of way. But at the same time, one of the things that I liked about this is that it has a real sort of Hitchcockian sort of sensibility in some ways, and it's this weird grungy movie about a dude who literally smells bad because he lives in Silver Lake where there are skunks everywhere. And yet there's this lush music. There's almost this sort of Bernard Herrmann quality to it. So it kind of has this interesting bifurcated quality of being the sort of elaborate goof about the sort of crazy crazy Los Angeles overflowing with mystery and wonder and weirdness. But at the same time, there's kind of this elegant old Hollywood quality to it as well.
Yeah, and when people compare this to like a movie like Mulholland Drive, I think that's what they're getting at too, where there is this eeriness, and that that's a movie that has this dreamlike kind of uncanniness to it, but also is very funny in parts. And I do get kind of that vibe from this film. It's particular, almost too much in certain parts. Like I know the like homeless king that he encounters seems so much like the cowboy from Mulholland Drive, and but yeah, it is definitely Hollywood is in its veins. There's all kinds of references to old movies, to dead celebrities. They're literally at the grave of Hitchcock. Actually, at one point, you see Hitchcock's tombstone in there, and there's old movie posters everywhere.
I feel like the Griffith Park Observatory figures in it. Does it not?
Yes.
I feel like this is the kind of movie that has to have the Griffith Park Observatory. And I actually did back the AV Club back in the day when they did videos. They did a thing called Pop Pilgrims, where people would go to places that were important culturally. And I got to go to Griffith Park Observatory, and it was really special and beautiful. And again, that's kind of one of my favorite places in the world, in part just because it's
I love it.
and it's nice to hang out there. And then also because, we're both out of cause, and all of these movies have been filmed there. And I feel like, again, one of the sort of strengths of Under the Silver Lake is that it's very... it's a movie, and it has Hollywood in its veins. And just like Southland Tales, it's such a Los Angeles movie, and it's a Los Angeles movie in its very own, a weird, very personal kind of way.
And it's a period piece for 2011, which is interesting. Only 7 years earlier than when the movie came out.
Which is a Big Lebowski thing, because the Big Lebowski was 98.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was set during this. So yeah, I think that's very much, kind of that. And this is one of my favorite Andrew Garfield performances, because he's just kind of a schmuck. And I appreciate that. I like a protagonist who's passive, who's weird, who doesn't really know what he's doing. I think the whole idea of a guy who's forced to play detective when he can't figure out his own life is really interesting to me.
I totally agree about Andrew Garfield. He is so funny in this movie, and it's a role that you'd think wouldn't give you a whole lot to work with, but just his physicality, the way he sits in chairs and just kind of like slides into them, the way that he just, when he gets off the phone, says goodbye just makes me laugh every time. And
like the horniness of his
oh yes,
character, just like the overriding horniness of it. He's always just like the male gaze. And I think one of the things that's kind of interesting about that is you get the sense of like this is a very subjective sort of thing, and you're sort of seeing it through his eyes, and he's stoned, and he has some weird ideas about the world. He just kind of plunges deeper and deeper, and I kind of like the idea of him as a very unreliable narrator. And we're seeing the world through his eyes, and he's very, very blinkered, and he's this sort of daft figure who's sort of Alice in Wonderland, and this is sort of crazy Los Angeles. That's very Lewis Carroll-esque, and very Lynchian as well.
Yeah, and for anyone who hasn't seen it, Garfield plays a character named Sam who lives in LA. Doesn't have a job or any aspirations. I'm not sure.
He's about to get evicted.
Yeah, not sure how he even ended up like where he is, and we never get any indication of that. But he is obsessed with finding codes and patterns and hidden messages and things, whether it's Vanna White on Jeopardy, like looking a certain way, or song lyrics, or a comic book, or a kid's treasure map.
Obsessed with the zine.
Yes,
that kind of talks about sort of this sort of hidden dark history of Los Angeles, and their characters like the Owl Lady, who's sort of this nightmarish, sort of succubi evil figure. There are elements of horror in this, which I found kind of interesting.
The dog killer.
They talk about the hobo code, which I found very, very interesting. So this is a very specific movie. There are all these kind of like weird, funky little details that I personally really connected with, even if I could see where it would strike other people as self-indulgent or weird or cheap or kind of tonally all over the place. But I, as with Southland Tales, I was on its register. I was tuned into its frequency, and I was willing to go wherever it wanted to take me.
Same here. It's a very, you could say, digressive movie that there's lots of little, not necessarily subplots, but kind of just dead ends and, sequences that anyone could look at and say, that, maybe that wouldn't have to be there. But basically for the plot is just that he starts investigating this disappearance of a girl he talked to one night who, moved in next to him,
who's very beautiful and charismatic.
Yes. And she disappears after they almost, like, they're about to make out or something on her bed, and then her roommates come, and there's a guy who's is the pirate there at that point?
Yeah, the guy who looks like a pirate is there.
There's a pirate, and he's like looking at this pirate guy, and he walks out, and suddenly her whole vibe is different, and she just needs him to leave. Like, it's time to go. And it's sort of, there's fireworks, and they watch fireworks, and then she just goes back inside, and that's that.
She's gone from the rest of the movie, pretty much.
That's the end of it.
And
that's the mystery. That's kind of the sort of human MacGuffin.
Yes,
is like, where is this person, and have I lost my mind? Like, am I existing in the same reality as everybody else? And there are these ideas about the entertainment industry. And there is this sort of climactic appearance by somebody who presents himself as a kind of a sort of Phil Spector taken to the nth degree, somebody who creates all of the music in the world. And it's kind of like you're in a video game and you meet like the final boss. There's so many things about this movie that are just kind of crazy and weird, and it's one of those movies where it's like I like to imagine what the studio notes must be, what it would look like to read this 190-page script and be like, okay, my job is to like help you make this a movie that makes money. And like, this was never going to be a movie that was going to make money. This was never going to turn a profit. This was never going to be mainstream. This was never going to be a hit. I feel like this is one of those movies that just like played at midnight only. Because they didn't make a movie, they made a cult movie. And I enjoyed it very much on that level, but I could see other people being annoyed. Because usually what happens is, the audience decides that something's going to have a cult. And the audience chooses something. And a movie like this, as with Southland Tales, they kind of say, here's this crazy, weird movie in the history of all these other crazy cult movies. And you're going to love it, but you're going to watch it at midnight. And, I could see people like me loving that and other people being kind of put off by that.
See, I'm definitely here with the comparisons to The Big Lebowski or something like Inherent Vice. It being this like neo noir, this new spin on being like lost in conspiracy and following this and that and everything. I guess I beyond just the like it being a strange LA movie that is kind of convoluted. I don't I don't personally get why Southland Tales comes to mind, and it does for a lot of people. I've read so many reviews,
Yeah.
so many letterbox like write ups about it. That like that's like the hook, and I guess I just really see them as very different. There's very
I
different
get,
kinds of movies,
yeah,
just in the
I
way
get
that
it.
they are strange and
Oh,
off-putting.
totally. And again, I think there are a lot of thematic things, but there are certain, even just like things like the fact that they both feature fireworks. And at the very end of Southland Tales, there's this fireworks, and there's sort of party, this sort of street party that also becomes an apocalypse, and also becomes the Hindenburg.
Mm-hmm.
And also there's a bazooka and Christopher Lambert, because Canada needs to be represented. And then fairly early on in Under the Silver Lake, you also have fireworks, and I think there's kind of this idea of deviating from reality to the point of not just being like, oh, this is outlandish and this is kind of crazy and this is a cult movie, to the point of like, this is kind of an alternate universe. And the rules are kind of different there. And again, this sort of Los Angeles of mystery and darkness and wonder, and this sort of confused, sort of spiritual seeker trying to understand a mystery and trying to understand himself and trying to understand the world, and not doing a terribly good job of any of the three.
Yeah, these are both
what you're touching on is definitely what is. I'm rather lukewarm about this one, but what you're touching on is what keeps me coming back a little bit with thinking about it, because I started to feel that this time around more, and I'm kind of curious about what you guys think as to like, yeah, so some of it almost feels like it's dreams or like wish fulfillment, or like he is telling me a story that is not actually happening, because like some of my gripes are like these things that are these like every woman in this movie wants to fuck him, which I guess does make sense and is sort of like this grating thing with this that I am following around, like Andrew Garfield, who's like, I'm supposed to feel sorry for him, but he is this like hot guy and he's like totally like,
well,
I don't know.
I think it is subjective. I think you are sort of seeing things through his eyes, and the world is a lot weirder.
So do you think some of it is not actually happening? Like I'm curious about those layers.
Again, it's just sort of like I and part of it also is like I watched my my children's nanny has been sick for the last 2 weeks, so I haven't had as much time to work as I would like. I've also spent a lot of time rewatching the movie Weird, the L. Yankovic story. So I was only able to watch the first hour of this, but so yeah, like there are 80 minutes that I have not seen, and I saw the last time like maybe 2 months ago. But yeah, again, it's just the vibe is something that I really, really like. I really like the mood. I like the that it's this there's a lot of commonalities between all of these movies that I really like. I really like this is a Los Angeles movie. I really like the look of it. I really like the sound of it. So yeah, I totally can understand how it would seem very silly. I feel like it has a strange quality of being at once very Lynchian, but also being kind of like a Mad magazine. There's something very cartoonish about it. There's something kind of silly. There's something kind of broad about it. So yeah, this is a mess, but it's a mess that I really like. And I think as I get older, I think messiness is a positive thing, and it's a quality that I like. And I don't necessarily want things to be too tidy.
I feel that way too.
This is the antithesis of tidy.
Yeah, and I think both movies are kind of works of absurdity and at times surrealism, and that goes a long way towards explaining it. This one is more my speed because instead of seeming like overstuffed and constantly rushing from one thing to another, it really takes its time to let scenes unfold, to meet these characters, to soak in the milieu. And I do think there is something really cohesive about the silliness here, which I think Inherent Vice is something that can't help but come to mind, because another LA, noir kind of dark comedy, film, which I think this works a lot better because the
Ooh,
silliness
ouch.
in it is
Oh.
the absurdity
Ouch.
is more cohesive instead of just kind of random, and there is a real meaning going here. There are real themes that I think are very relevant in
Ouch.
this.
I got
And
stabbed. I got stabbed.
yeah,
Ow.
sorry, Seth, you're just wrong.
But there are things like, and it's funny again, just sort of talking about being very non-commercial. One of the there's like a screenwriting manual that's like, don't kill the cat or save the cat. One of the things they do is that, like, if you're making a movie, the last thing you want to do is kill an animal or hurt an animal or have an animal be in peril. So it was very, very flying in the face of that to introduce a dog serial killer. And this
Yes.
character who just goes around murdering dogs. And at one point they're like, wait, are there more than one dog?
Oh.
That's a serial killer.
Our main character also beats up children very early into the movie.
That's one thing I love, that the first bit of action that he does is that he punches a child who's peeing on his car.
Which helped me
And I
like
loved
it a
it.
lot more, that he
Oh.
isn't this like perfect like everyman
and-
or something. He's
and
very
he was-
clearly
and he-
like kind of
Oh, yeah, and-
problematic in his own way.
And
Yeah.
he was Spider-Man by that point.
Yes.
So it's very funny to see Spider-Man punch a child.
Yes.
As the first bit of action that we see in him, other than, screwing his neighbors.
Yeah, and I think that's very important about this character, is that he is the butt of the joke very often. He's sprayed by a skunk. He gets the shit beat out of him. He's a putz, and
He smells really
really
which
bad.
people keep meaning.
And like Seth said, the way that he sees women is kind of, it's kind of the view we get in the movie. But we also get stuff like that scene where him and Topher Grace are using this drone to kind of have this voyeuristic Porky's type moment with the girl undressing, and then she just starts crying. And they just get, it's just awkward. It just flummoxes them and they get up and leave. And I think that's more where the movie is coming from, that it's showing that this is the way he's seeing things, but it is giving humanity to them to the, acknowledging it to that extent. And
well, sex is a huge force in this movie, and it's kind of a weird force that he can't really control, and that he's kind of controlled by. I mean, it's kind of the catalyst for it, is that he really had the hots for this incredibly beautiful woman, and then she disappeared. And with it, his opportunity to get to know her a little bit better. So yeah, I think that is very noir, this idea of this mysterious woman. And she sort of plunges you into this world of darkness and this world of mystery and this world of shady characters that you maybe can't respect or you can't trust. Because again, there's just this weird world that he enters because of this girl.
Yeah, and I think it does interrogate his motives for that. And in many different ways, not just as far as his relationships are concerned, but this is a movie that is about avoiding the mundaneness and emptiness of reality. And whether it's through conspiracy theories or chasing down mysteries, and you could look tonally at how kind of fantastical things are and maybe find a through line there as well, where there's a scene where he's going through all these hidden messages and lyrics and putting together codes that literally leads to him masturbating. And I think that's kind of this in a nutshell. And there's a line that Topher Grace says, which maybe is a little on the nose, but I think is the whole thesis of the movie, that 100 years ago, any moron could wander into the woods, look behind a rock and discover some cool new things. But nowadays, where's the mystery that makes everything worthwhile? We crave mystery because there's none left. And that's so relevant from the period the movie set in to when it came out to now, when you just look at these, election deniers and QAnon people who are actually getting elected into office, and what the appeal they have to regular people who are disillusioned with everyday life. And I think that's just a really clever and illuminating and purposeful theme that this movie explores, that I think helps, even though it is kind of shitting on Andrew Garfield's character and making fun of him. There's a real emotional kind of connection that you can find there that makes the last few scenes in this movie a little bit moving to me in a way that I didn't expect.
Yeah, well, and you don't have to be a conspiracy theorist to see darkness in Los Angeles. You don't have to be a conspiracy theorist to see darkness in the. I mean, because that's one of the things that's kills me about QAnon is Harvey fucking Weinstein exists. He's
Yes.
a horrible person. He was this
Mhm.
massive cultural force, but nobody's drinking baby brains, you know? And
Yeah.
and by, making up these ridiculous monsters, you're, doing a terrible disservice to people who genuinely are preyed upon by the actual monsters of Los Angeles, and they're not owl ladies, and they're not dog killers. So yeah, I think that's one of the things that's interesting is that there is, I mean, look at one of the movies this kind of reminded me a bit of was Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and the fucking Manson family, they're not made up, they were real, they genuinely did all of that shit. So there genuinely was this real darkness that movies like this kind of play upon, while also kind of inhabiting this sort of absurdist alternate sort of a Hollywood.
It's
Even more absurd, even more extreme, and even more surreal than the real thing.
It's a good comparison too, because there's also this again something about wish fulfillment about them both. Like we get at the end of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood a historical change that we actually get to kill those fuckers or whatever.
He burns down the Nazi theater. Oh wait, no, that's the other one. Sorry.
Which this also has this sort of like a conspiracy theorist dream, like made real, that which again is like this sort of like push pull that I like am still trying to figure out like how I feel about it, that it has this whole thing of like he has this theory, like he's bordering on having this theory, basically dreaming up this guy who is in this house that wrote everything from the Beatles to Nirvana, right? And then he finds him and he's like it feels like he's proven right. He's like, there are codes and everything. I was right. There is like, and in the same way in his interactions with women, it's just like it's borderline surreal that like there's even like a scene where he goes into like some Hollywood party randomly and he's got like just a white t-shirt and pajamas on, and a girl says like, I like your shirt, and she just looks like she wants to fuck him right there. And I'm just it's like all of these like layers of wish fulfillment that are interesting, and also like I can't tell what I'm supposed to do with them necessarily.
Yeah, there's this very crazy, very obscure movie called Uncle Kent 2, which was this crazy sequel to a mumblecore movie that nobody saw in the first place. And it begins with 20 minutes of the star of it and the screenwriter of it trying to convince, oh God, who's the guy, the mumblecore guy? The giant dude, he's like 8 feet tall. Joe something.
Joe Swanberg?
Joe Swanberg, yeah. Trying to
I didn't know he was that tall.
Uncle Kent too. Well, he's very, very,
okay.
very tall. And it's really hilarious. And then he's like, no, that's an incredibly stupid idea. Nobody remembered Uncle Kent. Nobody's gonna want a sequel called Uncle Kent 2. And then the rest of it is Uncle Kent 2, and him sort of losing his mind and taking lots of drugs and entering this alternate universe. And yeah, it's just bonkers. And then they made a novelization of it as well. And what I appreciate about it is it's so incredibly self-indulgent. And to make a sequel in the first place was self-indulgent, and then to do a novelization of it was incredibly self-indulgent. And everything about Under the Silver Lake feels really self-indulgent to me in a way that feels personal, and in a way that feels distinctive, and in a way that differs this from other movies. Again, like there are lots of other movies, and this has kind of the same funky feel to me as Southland Tales and the movies that I've described before, but it has its own personality and it has its own sort of magnetism as well. It justifies its existence.
Yeah, and I think the key is that it does get really over the top, and especially that songwriter scene, which, by the way, I just want to shout out. I love that scene so much. Like it just gets so deliriously over the top with him sitting there playing through like Backstreet Boys hits and Nirvana, and he wrote everything, and that really there is nothing. It's kind of confirming in a surreal way this fear that there is nothing new. There was no rebellion. All of your culture and everything was just some guy cashing a check. And we're not meant. I don't think we're meant to take it literally. It's more like it's realizing a nightmare in his head. And eventually, when he does end up uncovering a secret like conspiracy thing. But all it is another group of people trying to avoid reality by walling themselves off in a tomb and imagining they're going to be ascended somewhere. So I think it is more about his, reasons and the undercurrents of what drives us to pursue those things or why we fear these things. Not in a way we're necessarily supposed to be, taking realistically, because this is not a work of realism any more than, Southland Tales is. But I think it's really perceptive in that way. And that scene is just hilarious. I think this is a very funny movie, and that goes a long way with me too. I laugh a lot during this movie. So, basically, I don't know. Maybe this is the point here to give our final thoughts about Under the Silver Lake. I started off last time. We can just go in the same order. This is a movie I love. It was much more my speed than Southland Tales, so I'm glad we've got all sides represented here. The worst thing I could say is this is definitely a very long movie too, and again, I think that's built into it. It maybe towards the end it does start to get a little bit slow, but besides that, I think it's really wonderful and singular, and it's exactly the vibe I was looking for. And again, I actually come away a little bit emotionally involved in this when we get to like the last couple scenes, and and once again, great work from Andrew Garfield. I would be surprised if I see a performance that ends up being more memorable than this one. But Seth, you're up.
Yeah, I definitely just like on the fence about this one. I guess I just don't really get having a strong opinion one way or the other. I just don't have one necessarily. So I guess I'm surprised by people who like flat out hate it, and I'm surprised by people that like just love it or something, because I just do feel like there's like movies that do what it does a lot better, and I do find the most interesting parts are this sort of like push and pull with imagination versus unreliable narrator and things like that. At the same time, a lot of it is just like stretching out these conspiracy ideas, and like to me felt like they were acting like they were very novel, like the idea that like, have you ever thought about like that there are numbers and they're in culture and they could be conspiratorial and there could be like meaning behind them. It felt like this, I don't know, for some reason it just struck me like this movie thought it was very novel, a lot of these things, and I just didn't find them very novel.
Yeah, I think one of the things that kind of endeared me to is I felt like this wasn't a movie that necessarily took itself very seriously. I kind of felt like Southland Tales, it's kind of an enormous goof.
Yes.
And it can be hard to realize that as a goof because it's a movie that lasts an hour and 40 minutes.
Yes.
Because if you're going to do a goof, like do it 85 minutes. Don't make this 2.5 hour long exploration into this world. But yeah, I really loved the world that created. I love Los Angeles. I also really like Silver Lake. And I felt like this captured Silver Lake's essence in a really interesting way. Kind of captured what it's like to be young and aimless, and kind of open to mystery in Los Angeles. Again, it's just my favorite Andrew Garfield performance. I really liked how silly it was. I liked how personal it was. I felt like both of these movies could have been made in the 1970s. When filmmakers had a lot more freedom to
Definitely
be crazy and be self-indulgent and pursue these non-commercial personal visions. And I don't think it's coincidental that since these films were made, only one film has been made by either director, and that was The Box, which was also a crazy box office flop that was really weird and intense. And again, I think that might have been more surprising because it looked like it should be a commercial science fiction movie, but then it turned out to be this crazy Richard Kelly movie, literally from outer space. So I want to see more movies like this from this filmmaker. I know counted to do more movies like It Follows, because they're successful and make lots of money and open up opportunities. But I say, come on, filmmakers, make these crazy movies that will destroy your career that weirdos like me can watch over and over again.
And movie going audiences, like, what's going on? Come around. It's not that hard. I don't know. Especially this one. I don't know.
Take a chance.
I guess I don't know why this one rubbed people so hard. I guess it is just sort of like, I guess I get the like some of the male gaze is probably off-putting for
but
people.
also, I think just
Also, the fact that he's like
self-indulgence pisses people off, and these are two very self-indulgent movies. And like messiness, I kind of see self-indulgence as a positive quality, in a fair number of cases. These being two of them.
Also, easy fodder that like he has like this. It feels like he has a parachute the whole time. Like the mom that keeps calling him, which is like funny. That like we're very aware that like this whole thing about him like getting evicted, he's probably just going to go back home with his mom and he's going to be fine because he's like economically safe in that way.
He's a handsome straight white man.
Yeah,
who looks like Andrew Garfield. He's going to be okay no matter what happens.
Yes, and I'm trying to avoid saying like boring things about it because I'm sure there are like there's a lot of low hanging fruit here for like very boring like leftist essays, about it. But I do feel a little bit of that here, I guess. Yeah.
Well, and these days, you have these directors who have a small indie success or that's acclaimed, and then their next movie has to be, a Marvel movie. And it's nice to see them using their cachet for something that is on that scale, but yet completely theirs. And that's something I kind of miss today, that at least when it comes to wide theatrical releases, almost never happens anymore. So they're time capsules in that way.
Oh yeah, and I'm thinking about like the only other screenplay that Richard Kelly has had produced, which was for a movie called Domino, which is based on a true story, and it's a crazy, crazy movie that's really bad. And there's only one good thing about it, which is Christopher Walken is a reality television producer.
Whoa!
And it's every bit as wonderful as you would like. And part of the problem was that Tony Scott,
right,
was the director, and Tony Scott was getting to the point where it's like. No scene could last longer than a fraction of a millisecond. Right. And that's not the rhythm of Richard Kelly. Like, as this director Scott illustrates, like, it's nice when he can stretch out, when he can have mood, when he can have tone, when he can, have a scene breathe a little. And that isn't what happened in Domino, and that is what happens particularly in the director's cut of Southland Tales.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's, why it works. Is sometimes a movie needs to be much longer than 2 hours, and that also pisses people off, but I feel like it works really well in both of these cases. And in Southland Tales' case, the much longer cut is also the much better cut.
I agree.
All right, so yeah, we started out this month talking about your typical bombs like Cats and Space Jam 2. Last week we had Matt Singer-Joyce talk about the Psycho remake. And I think we've finally worked our way up to the fiascos that actually have something to them and are perhaps actually great movies. Whether you agree on both of them, I think there's things to love that you could find in either one or maybe just one. And I like this. I like this arc that we've hit here now. The big disaster can sometimes be something that is really, at the very least, interesting and heartfelt. And who knows more about that than Nathan Rabin?
Well, these are the kind of movies that I like to advocate. So it felt good to spend an hour and a half advocating these motion pictures with you guys.
And we appreciate that so much.
Yes, thank you. I know we went a little bit over time here, but absolutely.
Southland Tales.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Stay tuned. We'll have a director's cut.
This is the Cannes cut version.
Yeah, this Cannes cut, Unwatchables.
Our most indulgent episode yet.
Yeah, did you see everybody walk out of the theater while we were talking? That was really cool. Yes. They were all really pissed.
Stay tuned for the 15-minute edit that will be released next Tuesday.
Wallace Shawn doesn't understand it.
Unwatchables is produced by Tony Scarpitti, hosted by me, Marc Dottavio, and Seth Troyer, with artwork by Micah Kraus. You can find Seth and I on Letterboxd under Marc Dottavio and Sloth Troyer. You can also check us out at unwatchablespod.com for links to our Twitter and Instagram, or support us on Patreon for bonus content and to have a say in what we watch. Thanks for listening.